Hello ladies and gentlemen, Big Daddy Top Hat here. While we have looked at many different wrestling games in the past on here, the majority of them have been based around the WWF's license. This has most recently included going back and looking at the story of Backlash, the cancelled sequel to No Mercy that at one point in time was scheduled to be released on the Nintendo 64. This was at the tail end of an era where there were still multiple large wrestling promotions in America, from the WWF to WCW and even ECW, having a large following in its own right. While the WWE has not had any real competition for many years, change appears to finally be on the horizon in the form of AEW. A new rival with a ton of money who are providing fans with a new alternative to WWE's corporate product. In today's video we are going to briefly touch on the story of AEW's rise so far, touch upon their upcoming officially licensed video game, but most importantly of all, take an up-close, in-depth look at the intriguing fan-made AEW No Mercy mod, a modification that alters No Mercy to feature all of your favourite AEW characters. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the mad story of the All Elite Wrestling Nintendo 64 game. Yeah! The last couple of decades in wrestling have certainly been different to those that came before them. Never in history has just one wrestling promotion dominated the global market for so long. Sure, we have had TNA wrestling along the way, but they never even came close at any point to taking Vince McMahon's promotion's crown. Through all of this though, many fans of wrestling have craved for more, and through the use of social media platforms, independent professional wrestling promotions have gained their own notoriety and cult followings along the way, often contributing to the development of various performers who would go on to become big players on the major stage. In spite of this, fans wanted even more from their wrestling and dreamed of a day where another major promotion would contend for WWE's top spot once more, even if many felt that such a scenario was no more than a fun pipe dream. You see, it's not just the fact that one big promotion can lead to stagnation in quality due to holding the monopoly, but the other huge problem is that it means wrestling talent are held over a barrel, with the option to work for said promotion, or just take their ball and go home. For decades there has not been anyone else around to put a better offer on the table for performers than that of WWE, so athletes have to literally like it or lump it. The winds of change though would finally begin to blow in 2017, with a butterfly effect beginning to unfold through a rather unlikely scenario. Professional wrestling journalist and spoiler man Dave Meltzer would comment that indie promotion Ring of Honor could never sell 10,000 tickets for one of their shows. This would lead to several of ROH's talent responding to said comment, including Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks. These wrestlers would group together to prove Meltzer and the rest of the world wrong that an independent event could draw 10,000 people, leading to them running an event known as All In September of 2018. Not only did they achieve their goal of running said show, but through social media they would actually manage to sell over 10,000 tickets in under 30 minutes. Just about everyone would be impressed with this show, with trademarks being filed for All Elite Wrestling in November of that year, with the announcement of the promotion becoming official in January 2019, in an episode of Being Elite on the Wrestlers YouTube web series. While All In may have done very well in its own right, no one really expected them to be a potential true WWE alternative. After all, WWE are a billion-dollar company. This changed though the moment it was announced that long-term wrestling fan Tony Khan would be AEW's president, a man from a whole family of billionaires. Later that same year, a partnership with Warner Media was announced, the same Warner Media who had previously owned WCW, the WWE's greatest rival of all time, and would begin airing weekly shows on their TNT channel, the very TNT channel that functioned as WCW's home throughout the Monday Night Wars. An alternative was finally here, mixing exciting new talent with established big names such as Chris Jericho and Jon Moxley. With post-pandemic the promotion's future looking more exciting than ever before, with both CM Punk and Daniel Bryan expected to debut for the company shortly. Perhaps the two most exciting performers who have appeared in WWE in the prior decade. The company are about to turn more heads than ever before, and that's without even acknowledging that the likes of Bray Wyatt, Braun Strowman and Brock Lesnar are all currently floating about and are up for grabs too. A new wrestling war certainly seems to be emerging. As part of All Elite's expansion into mainstream culture, they of course have an official video game on the way, which is in development by Yuke's, the same company behind the acclaimed SmackDown series from back in the day. But as exciting as the SmackDown games were, I personally have always preferred No Mercy, the most fun to play wrestling game of all time in my opinion. Many others out there appear to agree with my worldview when it comes to such a game's quality, which in turn means the fan modding community keep the engine alive by continuing to produce modifications that showcase various promotions and moments in history through a No Mercy lens. Thus meaning we can simulate AEW wrestlers fighting it out using an old school format that grumpy old men like myself are highly comfortable with. In this mod's case that we are talking about today, this one was produced by an internet user who goes by the alias of Barskio, with version 1.3 of the game currently being available to play as of now. When it comes to these fan mods, briefly touching on them in the past, many have asked me if they can play them using an EverDrive so that they can run them on an actual Nintendo 64. However, unfortunately I am going to have to inform you that this does not appear to be possible, meaning that these Nintendo 64 game modifications can only be experienced on the likes of PCs, Android devices and other more open formats. The primary reason for this appears to be due to the fact that in order for modders and players alike to be able to get the required changes they desire, additional graphical textures need to be added to the game through plugins, which I achieved through running both the game and the plugins through a Nintendo 64 emulator named Project 64. The game came packed with a great video tutorial making this process extremely easy for me to achieve. So now, what does this AEW mod actually contain? First of all, when you boot the game up, you get a nice bold All Elite Wrestling logo, followed up by a custom made AEW menu, where gamers can select various match types and more. The game as of yet does not include as many features as the original No Mercy, but what is available so far does its best to deliver an AEW-like experience. The Wrestler Select screen offers a huge roster of AEW athletes, all of which have their own custom photo avatars accompanying them, meaning you can play as pretty much every AEW wrestler on the roster as of the time that this mod was published. You will also note that once action starts out in the ring mat is emblazoned with an AEW logo, continuing to try its best to make this AEW No Mercy experience feel even more authentic. The wrestlers I have played as so far appear to have detailed movesets that emulate each of the characters' real-life television counterparts, further adding to the detail that this mod brings to the table. One thing I was reminded of playing through this modification is how insanely long many athletes' wrestling careers actually are, with the likes of Chris Jericho, Christian and Matt Hardy all appearing in both the original No Mercy as well as showing up here as active AEW roster members, despite there being more than a 20-year gap between these games. Speaking of old boys, I guess it is amusing to see Sting here too. To put into perspective how different wrestling is to competitive sports, Sting is the same age as former professional footballer Gary Lineker, a man who retired as an athlete back in 1994. However, Sting is still physically active 27 years past the end of Lineker's run. Wrestling is insane really. When it comes to insanity, life can be quite surreal in general too. As is seeing that Kip Sabian has been modded into this game, someone who I used to wrestle regularly on the British indie circuit. It has been a bizarre journey seeing him being a flipping pile drivered by Goldust on TNT, or seeing him in skits alongside Rusev and Billy fricking Mitchell, of all people. If all of this wasn't weird enough, it is even stranger to see someone you know personally modded into a game you loved so much growing up. I don't know what's more weird when I think about it, wrestling or just my life in general. All the heavy hitters are included in this game, for example being able to take control of the Young Bucks and others in tag team action, and being able to perform plethoras of flippy floppy moves. There is enough dynamic action and flippy floppy fun in this one to make Jim Cornette die of a heart attack from one of those anger-induced rants of his. Away from tag team action, other exciting stars are of course all here, who are also heavily associated with the AEW brand, such as the athletic Kenny Omega or my personal favourite character from AEW, MJF. The most interesting personality in all of professional wrestling at the moment, in my opinion. Speaking of roster members, Brody Lee is also playable, the former Wyatt family member who sadly passed away unexpectedly in December 2020, dying from an uncommon lung condition known as idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. While very sadly gone, his presence in this mod now pays homage to his wrestling career. While this game already brings much to the table, still with it being version 1.3 of the game, one would imagine this title will likely be modified again multiple times in the future, firstly to add new talent into the mix, as well as perhaps introducing missing features such as custom stage backdrops, entrances, story modes and more. AEW No Mercy modding is looking promising indeed, and I cannot wait to see what else is introduced in the future. Considering how hot AEW is right now, with all the Daniel Bryan and CM Punk speculation, I thought now would be as good a time as any to look at this title. However, I am of course very aware there are lots of other detailed No Mercy modifications out there. So keeping this in mind, I would love to know which one you would be keen for me to highlight next on the channel. I believe there are some super detailed and refined ones to play that have taken years and years to perfect. So that was the Nintendo 64's AEW mod. If you enjoyed today's video, why not consider checking out my wrestling game playlist, where there are a number of videos covering wrestling gaming history, including an in-depth piece on the history of the original No Mercy game, which you can go back and watch. If you are new here, I would really appreciate it if you could hit that subscriber button and ring that notification bell to ensure that you are made aware of all of my future uploads. I release 2 new documentary style videos covering gaming history every single week on here. Making these videos full time is in part made possible due to the fact that some of my lovely viewers support the channel via the Patreon platform. So with regards to these fine specimens, special shout outs go out to Sebastian Velez, A Murder of Crows, Carl Johnson, Heo Paulo Lopez, Nostalgia Collector, Ben Harradine, Corey Omar Senior, Capcom vs SNK, BXL Gotham, Rowan Dinched, Evan Balder, Philip Mamph, Azra Arkai, Keith Ferguson, Jotkin Varela, Michael Cullix, Ago, Jordan Durant, Angel Light 85, Ian Boyle, Nick Daniels, Princess Zana, Daniel Daly, Computer Man, House of a Ted, Gary Pinkett, ECU Professor, Kid Anime, Justin Wang, Aaron McNamara, Hermes Gonzalez, Instant Gratification, Monkey Man, Shovel, James Bishop, JB, Michael Hall, Wesley Sanghi, Felatio, Langston Miller, Noob, Brian Barry, Sarah Powell, Vlaming Renee, Marvin Aaron Liga, Chris Cool, TOG Driver, Adrian Hannington, Bernard NG, Richard Stu Stewart, Dan Van Damme, Lewis Viant, John Bates, David Bow, Chris Fisk, Michael Bruno, Rick67, Antonio Rodriguez, Craig Jenkins, RetroReverse.com, Casey Wright, Synth Spaces, Zai, Andrew Bazanski, Alex Summers, Gunther Hendricks, and everybody else who backs this channel. Thank you so much. Yeah, Daddy loves you.